When is the last time you thought you could actually trust the media? At every turn, lies. 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 On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you trust the media? That's what we thought. This is Unraveling the Narrative with Alex Newman and Sean Jackson. You want the truth? We have it. Completely unbiased, 100% diehard free speech, Christian, investigative, and honest reporters, focusing on the UN, globalism, child abuse, government overreach, and lies, lies, lies. Get ready for something new, honest, and refreshing. This is Unraveling the Narrative, and this is Alex Newman and Sean Jackson.
Welcome to Unraveling the Narrative, the Globalist Report. I am Sean Jackson, sitting in for Alex Newman, who will be back on Tuesday. Thank you for joining us tonight. And we have a very special guest, a very important guest. I think we're on guest number 65. If you've missed any of those, go back and check it out. Last night was David Weiss. Shout out to him. Shout out to Jaron for promoting the page. Tonight, we want to talk about the Constitution and your rights. The point really of this page and getting it all to work out was to cross-promote people with different ideas that you may never hear of in your life. So tonight is Hal Shurtleff of Camp Constitution. I hope you take the time to share this one out. We're going to talk about a lot of things, and if it goes down, the podcast version is always at libertysentinel.org. Alex Newman will be back on Tuesday, and we want to shout out all the new subscribers. Thank you for sharing by word of mouth. A lot of people found out just how banned we are yesterday. But we may get more banned after tonight because the media has been lying for a long period of time. They have been lying about my next guest, who runs a constitutional camp for children. One article, when looking up his biography, says, headline, anti-gay hate group is suing to force Boston to give special rights to fly Christian flag. The reason they're a hate group is because they believe in Christianity. If you look deeper into that story, and Climate Crocs decided to put out a hit piece called Camp Nightmare, where climate denial gets a merit badge. So we all get merit badges, because soon I will be posting up the documentary again by Matt Landman that most people have not seen, and our interview with Matt Landman about geoengineering, climate change, so on, so forth. But tonight I do want to get Hal on. His time is precious. He runs Camp Constitution, which helps educate people on their constitutional rights that are being eroded right now. And I want to get his take on a number of things. One, he's from Boston. I want to talk about the Boston bombings. Number two, the books. Three, the revolution, civil war that is coming in America. And four, where he thinks we're at in terms of constitutionality right now. So we're going to get Hal on the line if we can. You might hear a blank space, and it's not uncommon for this show to drop out all guests randomly. So we're going to try once, twice, if not more. But he will be on. Hal Shurtleff, Camp Constitution. You should check them out at campconstitution.net. So I have Hal Shurtleff on the line right now, and this has been an insane event, and I hope people can see how banned it is, and I hope they share it out. Hal, I ran down your biography. I went to go look up your biography, and the first couple of pages come up campconstitution.net. Can you explain that to people?
Yes, well, I'm the co-founder and director of Camp Constitution. We are a charitable trust. We were founded back in 2009, and we, among other things, run a wonderful week-long family camp. We just had our camp back in mid to late July in New Hampshire, and Alex Newman was one of our guest instructors. He came with his whole family. And in addition to the family camp, we do information tables at various events, homeschool shows, all kinds of gatherings. We have our own speakers bureau, actually up here in northern Maine, on a speaking tour, speaking about who's behind the riots with Reverend Stevie Kraft, who's he's our camp chaplain and one of our instructors. And so I've been doing this full time since February of 2017, by God's grace.
So right now, explain Camp Constitution though. Is it yearly? Is it as needed? Is it how can people get there, find out, and what exactly is it teaching them?
Well, Camp Constitution, again, it's a charitable trust, and we have a week-long family camp. Now, the camp ended July 24th. It's only 1 week, although we are very much interested in working with other groups around the country to establish other camps. We also do day-long seminars, and we've done weekend seminars. We have a learning center in Lexington, Massachusetts, just a few blocks away from the Lexington Battle Green, where we host seminars. We're actually going to have a black, I hate to use the word civil rights because that's really a leftist term, but we're going to have a black conservative civil rights conference with patriotic black people exposing groups like Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
And extolling this great nation, the greatest nation in the history of mankind. Just the opposite of the narrative that we're getting from the mass media and getting from all these left-wing organizations and this ridiculous cancel culture.
Yeah, well, so we've been super censored on this stream for a long time before Alex Newman signed on. And I am myself a victim of numerous hit pieces coming out before I was public and worked in the chemistry industry. And my question, I read off before you joined me on the phone. I went to go look up your biography in campconstitution.net. Now, then after that, I see a climate crazy website that says that I might just win a merit badge for climate denial. That was the third result. So do I get my merit badge? Because I am denying that the climate is... I'm not going to say I'm denying it's man-made in the sense that it's your hairspray. Now, maybe the largest military in the world might have an impact. Maybe geoengineering might have an impact, and tampering with the weather might have an impact. Maybe that does have an impact. I'm not going to deny that. But do I get my merit badge?
Well, I think you get a merit badge from us. So anyway, I can explain what happens at our week-long family camp. We usually hold it at a campground where there's recreational opportunities. There's a lake or a pond, places to hike, places to do archery, places to do other basketball, volleyball. But what makes our camp very, very unique is that we have some incredible instructors, and we have families, and we have young people of all ages. From toddlers, babies, up until teenagers and 20s and 30s and what have you. So it's for all ages. We do have a special program for the youngsters we call the Junior Camp or Patriot Camp, where they learn about our incredible history, learn about our Constitution at the level, at that level of understanding. We actually have little parades where they dress up and with muskets and colonial attire. The older campers and adults get some great instruction from people like Professor Willie Soon, who was one of the top climate realists in the world.
Yeah.
He comes with his whole family. Alex Newman, of course, who is an expert on practically everything.
Yeah.
We had Lord Christopher Monckton, and he wasn't able to make it this year, but he did Skype in and do a class. Yeah. And that's what that article you're reading came from a left-wing Marxist source. There was a number of them that picked it up.
Obviously.
When they found out that Lord Monckton was there. And they called him the world's creepiest counselor. So I actually read the article, part of the article at camp last year at our closing ceremony, and I said, "Who here thinks Lord Monckton's a creepy counselor?" And everybody just stood up and cheered wildly for him. It was a real fun time.
Okay, so welcome, Vegan Bear. Thank you guys for all bearing with us and trying to get this connection settled. They tried to shut down this stream for no reason at all, but Lord Monckton and that whole movement basically overthrew the Al Gore movement of the climate alarmist in the 90s. And they basically went to court and found out that everything in An Inconvenient Truth never came true. It was very inconvenient for Al Gore. And so they, instead of pulling the movie out of British schools, they ended up putting a bunch of redactions But if it wasn't for people like Lord Monckton, then they would have nothing to be outraged about. But they lost in a court of law. Am I correct in saying that?
That's correct. Yes, that's right.
So,
the inconvenient truth was really more like an inconvenient lie, inconvenient propaganda.
Yeah, and I love that. So let me ask this: so you right now you're teaching young kids, and that's why I teamed up with Alex, because I think that teaching young kids is very important. And adults as well. You'd be surprised at how many people don't know their constitutional rights. I mean, I didn't have mine for almost 5 years. I had to fight to get them back. But right now in this revolution, this communist Marxist revolution that we're in right now, do you feel like we have lost those for good, or do you still feel like there is hope? Like, we can't assemble freely. We cannot congregate freely. They can use labels and make things go away. We've forgotten that the right to bear arms is to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government. It is not to go duck hunting. And
That's
now they're
right.
coming for the free speech as well, obviously. So, I mean, I know that teaching the next generation to come out of the ashes better is a good thing, and that's why I'm on board with that. But right now, how do you see things playing out as we speak right now?
Well, I've been involved in the freedom movement since almost full-time basis since about 1988, and back then I didn't think we had 6 months. So here we are, all these years later. But I've learned a lot about the tactics of the communists.
Yeah.
And the appearance of popular support. They don't have popular support.
No.
I'm convinced of that. They do have a very powerful cadre. There's no question about that. But they do not have popular support. Even in Boston, where I live,
Yes.
we had a Back the Blue rally after the Antifa threatened to burn down one of the police stations, and the people in the neighborhood came out 400 or 500 strong, where the communists were not nearly that strong, and they backed down. In Holton, Maine, I'm in the city of Presque Isle, which is a small town in Aroostook County. But about a month ago, some Black Lives met, and it's just a small population in this county. It's as big as Connecticut. The population is 75,000, and they bust in some. We used to use the term outside agitators in Holton, Maine, a little town in Presque Isle, where I-95 ends. By the way, I guess where Holton, Maine is, or begins, depending on where you're from. And within a short time, the word got out that they're going to destroy Holton. The patriots, the citizens came out within an hour and a half, and the Black Lives Matter people went home. They went back on the bus and got out of here. No damage was done. And they realized, I went with my friend Reverend Stevie Kraft, and he's from New Jersey originally, and he's just marveling that everybody up here is packing. Everybody, women, men, young people. It's a safe place. They're not going to put up with the nonsense. And we see this happening all around the country when these Antifa people are popping into towns, suburban towns and rural areas. They're getting the clock clean. They're getting the heck out of there. So we're pushing back.
Yeah.
And I'm confident that we're gonna pull through this even stronger. And I know that the enemy discouragement is the most potent weapon they have. And I think again they do have the mass media. They do have a lot of influence, but they don't have the majority. They have a small minority.
Fear and propaganda, they control almost all of it. And that's why I tell people not to be afraid or let them make decisions. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, well, something, in 2016, when everybody, Hillary Clinton's going to be president and the world's coming to an end. And you know who, and again, I'm not suggesting that Trump is, a staunch constitutionalist by any stretch, but he's been doing some pretty good things compared to all the presidents in my lifetime. But it was the Democrats. It was the rank-and-file Democrats that got Trump elected. Now, in Boston, the Republican Party is very small. It's run by Democrats, and I bump into Democrats who come up and say, Hal, they look around like they don't want anybody to hear me. I don't know anybody in my circles that voted for Hillary Clinton, and I hear that a lot. Look at West Virginia. West Virginia was solid Democrats for years until Hillary said, we're going to close the coal mines and you guys will be flipping burgers. And boy, she got kicked out of that state. What was like a 3-1 margin, a 4-1 margin. And I traveled since this lockdown. We've been traveling a lot. We've been going to Open Up Massachusetts rallies. I actually drove down to Helen, Georgia, which is a beautiful town in North Georgia, to a Christian motorcycle event, the Heaven Saints motorcycle gathering, and it was 300, 400 people. And driving back, I did through some small towns. I went through Marion, Virginia, and I think I saw one Biden sign. I think I saw one Bernie Sanders bumper sticker on a car on the highway. In Boston, I've only seen 2 Joe Biden campaign signs in the city. It's just amazing. I said, I don't. And then since they picked this Harris lady, I don't think it's going to help the cause one bit. I think it's going to get more people voting on the other side. So I'm not a Pollyanna, but I'm not a gloom and doomer as well. And win, lose, or draw, this country won't be destroyed. I think we're going to prevail. It's going to take some work, and there's a lot of things but we're going to prevail. And as a Christian, and our message up here is that we're dealing with a spiritual issue. When you see the hate and rage of people, I mean, Portland, Oregon, Portland is a leftist city. What are they protesting about? I mean, for 71, are you kidding me? These guys are paid people that are trying to destroy the city.
Yeah.
What exactly are you protesting about? You have it made here. You have a left-wing city. It's implementing Agenda 21. You've got rainbow flags everywhere. What's your problem?
Yeah.
Well, we know the problem. The problem is revolution. We know that.
Yeah.
And they're showing their true colors, too. And this is helping us.
So
this is helping us.
Go ahead. Sorry, Hal.
Yeah. The mayor of Boston, he was born in the city, a so-called Catholic, and he's showing that he's a total coward by caving into Black Lives Matter. And these major league sports teams with their stupid Black Lives Matter logos, this is what happens when the fans aren't in the stadium. They show what they're really about.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people are jumping on bandwagons. There was a book published years ago. I think it was called The Madness of the Crowd. And the author had a history of, hysteria. And I don't know if I agreed with everything that the author promoted, but he said that people lose their minds in large crowds, but they get their minds back or recover their senses one by one. And you just have to say, look, Black Lives Matter. Yes, it does. Of course, that Black Lives Matter. All lives matter. But the organization, just go to their website, and they're not hiding it. They're out and out Marxists that want revolution. They want to destroy this wonderful system we have, and they use these stupid terms like systemic racism. That's absolute nonsense. And as my dear friend Reverend Kraft, he would have joined me, but he's lost his voice a little bit. We have systemic sin, not systemic racism.
Right.
And the notion that one of my favorite subjects is the American Revolution, and the people made that happen successfully. There were 5,000 Black Americans that fought for independence. Many of them got their freedom. Some of them died. They died because they knew the principles, and that even if all of them weren't free, and we still had to deal with slavery another 100 years or 90 years or whatever, they were fighting for the next generation or the next 2 generations, and they got it. And I tell you, there are so many Black Americans who are just patriotic, that love this country. We had a wonderful bar in the middle of the lockdown, July 4th, Independence Day, when in Lexington, when they didn't have very much going on. We had a wonderful event in our learning center, just a few blocks from the Green. We actually took a bunch of people down to the Green who've never been there before, including some of our black, some black folks that were with us and Hispanic folks. And there was some Black Lives Matter, upper middle class, left wing teenagers that were brainwashed in their government schools with their stupid little signs, Black Lives Matter, right in front of the Lexington Minutemen statue. And here are these black patriots. One of them is the ladies dressed in red, white, and blue outfit with an American flag, and she says, "We're not oppressed. This is a great country. We love being Americans. We don't feel racism." And with the lady who's running for Congress against Ayanna Pressley, she said, "I don't really support reparations, but if you want to pay me some money, I'll be happy to take it now." And they didn't know what to say. They turned it back. So their knowledge is so superficial.
Right.
They really can't handle the facts. They just regurgitate 1619. They have no knowledge.
Well,
of the history
1619
of
is
slavery.
made up. It's completely it's a work of fiction. The author came out and said that it was a complete work of fiction. It's not even anywhere near reality whatsoever. Once again, I'm on the phone with Hal Shurtleff. I don't have an overlay for it. We did almost get knocked off or shut down tonight. This interview almost did not happen. You want to check him out at campconstitution.net. So we're talking about your freedom, the insanity in the world, the BLM Antifa protest as we speak right now. He is from Boston, and we are talking about the Christian worldview and how it only makes sense right now when you look at it through a Christian lens. Another hit piece that I read off, Hal, was that at one point in time, it was like the fourth article down when you look up Camp Constitution. It's amazing how these things get listed. But that you had fought to put a Christian flag up at a city hall, and then they tried to say because you were a Christian, you were a part of a hate group. Am I getting that backwards? Am I missing something?
It wasn't quite that way. What happened was, it was 2017. I applied to get a permit to raise the Christian flag, and we wanted to do it in conjunction with Constitution Day, September 17th, which is also the founding of the city of Boston, ironically, in 1630. And we were going to have a ceremony. We were going to raise the flag on what we call a public access flagpole at City Hall Plaza in Boston. Now, 5 or 6 years ago, we raised the Gadsden flag without any trouble. That's the Don't Tread on Me flag.
Right.
But this flag, this is a non-denominational flag, and the only thing it has on it's a white background, blue canton with the red cross. The cross is the Latin cross.
Right.
There's no wording on it. And they came back and they said that it's a violation of the separation of church and state. And that was in September 17. Well, the city's flag has a Bible verse on it, which from the Old Testament, it's in Latin, but it's there. They've raised the flags of the rainbow flag, the newly minted transgender flag.
Oh.
They've raised the flag of Communist China. They've raised the flag of Communist Cuba. So it's private groups that get the permit. But when they raise the flags of the homosexual flags and all, city officials participate. Sometimes the mayor, sometimes city councilors. When they started raising the flag of Communist China, Ayanna Pressley, who is a member of Congress now, member of the so-called squad, I call it the Gang of Four, more appropriate. She was a city councilor. She was there praising the Chinese Communist Revolution that only killed, 60, 70 or more million people.
Yeah, conservatively.
So Liberty Counsel took our case. That's a Christian-based law group that's based in Florida, founded by Matt Staver, and they were very happy to take the case. It's still pending. We have just recently 18 left-wing groups filed an amicus brief against us, and I was a little upset. Only 18? People from the American Way and some Muslim organizations, some left-wing atheist Jewish organizations, and others. I don't think the ACLU has signed into this one yet, but I'm sure they will. But we're optimistic that we're going to win the case.
Oh, it's still ongoing. It's still ongoing.
Yeah, and we're going to have our flag raising ceremony. And but it's also something interesting happened because of our flag case. A gentleman who's become a good friend of mine wanted to raise the straight pride flag, which they minted, relatively new, a year and a half ago. The city said no to them, so they had a straight pride parade through the city of Boston last summer. It was amazing. They had international media.
I remember that. So like all these Congress people line up basically to get naked and celebrate the raising of the homosexual flag, but for whatever reason you can't raise a Christian. And if you go down in that article where they try to do a hit piece on you, they go, look what this bigot posts on his Twitter. And one page is Drag Queen Story Hour and the most scary looking demon pedophile you'll ever see. And then your class with a bunch of Christian, nice looking kids. And they were like, how dare him think that any of these children are different? And you're like, you put a crazy, insane clown transgender around kids publicly funded, and you're trying to compare this, and you're calling him the bad guy. This is the most inversion of reality I've ever seen. It's sick.
Well, what we decided to do, the public libraries are supposed to be open to the public, and we've used library rooms for our meetings many over the year. I mean, before Camp Constitution was founded. But I thought, it's right to protest these ridiculous drag queen story hours, but let's fill the void. Let's have patriotic reading hour. So we actually had a Reverend Kraft and his wife. We were in the city of Fall River, Massachusetts, where they just had a drag. This would be back in November, and the guy who invited the drag queen in was more than happy to invite us in, and we did a program on the first Thanksgiving and the Pilgrims, and my two friends were dressed in the costumes of not exactly replica costumes, but still. And we were trying to get other groups around the country to do likewise. Go in there and read to them about the Constitution, read to them about our great history. And some people have taken up the baton. So the left is just filling the void. The left says, hey, they get a public library. We're going to use it to pervert to youth. We can use it to educate and edify the youth.
Yes.
So I just put that together. And, of course, they see something like that. Yeah. And they defend that. I think they had a picture of a drag queen with a satanic
horns
coming out of and that's supposed to be good, wholesome entertainment for young people.
Yeah, like we're living in a complete inversion of reality. It's like they've taken over everything, and they're like, oh, we're so inclusive unless you're a Christian, and then it's gulags for you.
Oh yeah.
That's a scary thing. Go ahead.
Well, there is what I think they call overkill or overplay in their hand. I attended the Washington, D.C. March for Life for the first time. I've been to local pro-life gatherings, but this is the first time I went down to D.C. Back in January, and I was so encouraged. I saw hundreds of thousands of mostly young people from different denominations, Catholic, Protestants. And Donald Trump addressed the group. It was the first time a president, either sitting or former president, every now and then a president will send a little message, but he addressed the group. And it was so encouraging to see something like that. And then these thousands of people, they didn't burn D.C., they didn't burn the Supreme Court, but it was just a wonderful time. Of course, it was just, again, I've never seen so many people in one place in my life. And I said, this is the goodness of America, that there's still plenty of excellent and good people. The culture isn't yet totally destroyed. But again, if you turn on CNN, you turn on Netflix, you would think that everybody is a degenerate, everybody is a pervert, but that's not the case at all.
No, okay. So first off, though, do you think that, like, knowing the Constitution, teaching the Constitution, we'll have more, I guess, Catholic or Christian ideas on tomorrow with Dr. Duke Pesta. But do you think constitutionally we're in the middle of a revolution right now? Because it seems to me that they have taken away the First Amendment. We can't speak to each other. They might shut off our phones. They might silence us online. Number 2, they can go ahead and take your firearms. Number 4, they can kick down your door at will, shoot your dog, no big deal. And these freedoms have slowly been getting eroded since 2001. And it seems like we're at this point where we need to start making decisions. If more constitutional rights or the Bill of Rights get destroyed or eroded any further, it seems like now is the time to draw a line.
Well, I think you're absolutely right about drawing the line. But let me look. It's one of the arguments that the gun controllers say is, why do you need an AR-15? Why do you need to have they say use the word clip instead of magazine? That tells you that they don't know anything on firearms.
Right.
Well, because it's just my wife and I, and we've got 100 Antifa guys in front of my house. That's why we need an AR.
Yeah.
And you call 911, and the police can't come because you've just defunded the police. Or the police have bugged out because if they show up, they're going to be arrested. They're going to go to jail when they try to uphold the law.
Yeah.
So, that's why we have an AR-15. That's why we need a 100-round clip. That's why we need a belt of a 50 caliber machine gun. Because you guys, you can't call 911 anymore. How's that for an answer?
Yeah.
And they can't argue that point. What are we going to do? You're going to call 911? I'd rather be murdered than be called a racist or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
But there is a bit of badness going on when, and this coronavirus, shutting down churches while the abortion mills are open.
Yeah.
But you know what? The remnant is there. I just came back from an open-air tent meeting here in just a little south of Prescott. It was so nice. Nobody's wearing masks, Nobody's getting sick. And lots of people who love freedom are out there exercising their freedom, their right to worship, the right to assemble, the right to free speech. And there are a lot of people out there that are afraid to speak.
Yeah.
Because if they speak, they might lose their job or be boycotted. But look what happened to the CEO of Goya. He wouldn't back down, and you go to a supermarket and they just sold out of Goya. They've got all kinds of customers.
Yeah.
So when they try this cancel culture, you just got to push back.
Yeah.
There's a guy in North Adams, is a small city in the western part of Massachusetts. He was on a cable TV show, and someone asked him about Black Lives Matter. He said they're a terrorist organization, and he said this coronavirus, they're overplaying their hand. And well, the next thing you know, his so-called colleagues going to oust him. He just resigned and disappeared. Fight back, you got to fight back.
Yeah.
Because you cannot yield to a bully. Because if you yield to a bully, it's not good enough. And there was this policeman in Webster, Massachusetts. Webster is on the southern part of central Massachusetts. And this is almost predominantly white community. And all these little brats who public school brats or government school brats are in front protesting. And the police chief comes out with his mask on. And they said, Neil, he gets on the ground for 8 minutes and groveling. Why did you have to do that? Tell these brats to go home.
Yes.
I'm going to kneel? We didn't have anything to do with that incident in Minneapolis. It was interesting, too, as more facts are coming about that case. The body cam that didn't show Ku Klux Klan policemen showing up and beating him to senseless. It showed a little different picture. Again, it's the mob mentality. Oh, we have this crisis. We've got to pass laws. We've got to strip the police. We've got to do this at gun control. No, you never do anything in an emergency. You've got to think things through. So and no matter how much you placate the mob, who was it? The mayor of Olympia, Washington, a lesbian leftist, but she didn't want to abolish the police. So that didn't matter. They came to her house. Her rainbow flag didn't save her. Her Black Lives Matter sign didn't save her. They still trashed the house,
Yeah.
So you just don't give in to them. You push back, and bullies will. I mean, I great when I see all these videos of Black Lives Matter and Antifa people being pushed out of towns. We had some events in Massachusetts, and when they don't outnumber us, and it's interesting too. Some of these are out and out communists, like the Revolutionary Communist Party.
Yeah.
They have these signs reopening the economy is white supremacy. I'm thinking these people are insane. And they're all white people. There's not one black person. There's more black and Hispanic and Asian people on our side.
Yeah.
So I definitely think we have the numbers, we have the righteousness, and we just have to overcome this spirit of fear and just hit back, get back with them and get right in their face if necessary.
Well, G. Edward Griffin, the legend, gave us a shout today.
Yeah.
And he was the one that exposed that communism is accomplished in two different ways. One's very violently revolutionary. The other one's done through a lawful process, and both kind of work hand in hand. And it seems like that's exactly what's getting pushed forward. And unless you really can understand evil and these people's aims through, let's say, a Christian lens and a good versus evil lens, maybe you're not going to quite understand what's happening right now. And the Constitution can disappear tomorrow. That's what revolutions are all about, is ripping up the old and replacing it with the new. And sometimes I am a little concerned that, I get that it's an election year. I get the tensions are high, but I've never seen it get as bad as I've seen it right now. Have you?
I have not, and I'm 61. I lived through the forced busing in Boston. I was a 9-year-old boy when my car was stoned in the wake of Martin Luther King's assassination. I spent time in the 101st Airborne in the height of the Cold War. I was in Germany in a field artillery unit, so I've seen a lot, and not as much as some. But I'm glad you brought up Ed Griffin, because Ed Griffin, he had a number of documentaries way back in the 60s.
Yep.
He did one, and he focused on a man by the name of Manning Johnson,
Yep.
who was a former communist. He was a black man.
Yes. Tell it.
Who was raised in a Christian family, and he rejected Christianity and embraced communism because he believed that the only white people that cared about the blacks were the communists.
Right.
He went to Moscow, but he got an awakening. He said, these people hate us. They're using us for cannon fodder.
For cannon fodder. For cannon fodder.
That's what Black Lives Matter. They're cannon fodder. So anyway, he came back to the United States. He embraced it. He got back to his faith, got back to being a patriot. And he wrote he died. He was killed in a car accident, and some believe it was just an accident. Some believe that it was set up. But no matter, he wrote a book, really more like a booklet. It's only like 60 pages, called "Color, Communism, and Common Sense." 10 short chapters, and he talked about the black church or the Negro church. That in those days, the term Negro was
a commonly accepted word. You sell that book, right? People can get that on campconstitution.net.
We put it back in print. Reverend Kraft was visiting my home, and in my library was a copy, and I just assumed every single black patriot in the country has read that book. Well, no, they haven't. And so he saw it, and he read it, and he said, this could have been written yesterday. And he read it in 2016.
Yeah.
He said, this could have been written yesterday. Just take out some of the names and places. And I said, well, let's put it back in print, and we did. And for a while, it was just getting, 1 or 2 sales a month, and not a lot of interest. But the last couple of weeks, we've got a lot of interest. A Christian publishing company called me up and they said, we think we want to buy copies of your version. So yeah, you can go right to our website, campconstitution.net, and you see a little drop down that says shop, and you'll find it there. We got it sold for $15. And that includes shipping, sure. And if you want larger quantities, just give me a call or contact us. And our goal is just to get the information out. We're not trying to. We're a charitable trust, and we believe in getting. When we're in war, we don't want to ration bullets. So we think it's important. It's important for the American people to understand what this is going on. It didn't happen just because George Floyd got killed. This is something that's been in the works for many years.
They said they didn't like Christians and saints, and all of a sudden when he died, he became a saint. They put his murals up and statues up, and now we worship man instead of Jesus Christ or Christianity or any of that. We must get rid of that, but they're going to make the Church of Satan a 501c3 this year. It's a very odd time. What I do want to ask you, because you are from Boston, and I know you're very intelligent, and you have a very patriotic heart, and I'm very big into human experiments. Now, back in 2013, April 15th, you don't have to answer these questions. I know you take a lot of heat for what you say, but there was the Boston bombings back then. And during that point in time, the Shurtleff brothers that were allegedly, it came out later, were handled by the FBI, were chased down. They hurt some people. They blew them up. And what ended up happening after the Boston bombing was they locked down, it seemed to me, the first lockdown in American history of this scale with militarized police. But they locked down all of Boston, and all of Boston then complied. And then they were cheering for the militarized police after the Shurtleff brothers were caught. So my question is, do you consider that maybe the first lockdown, maybe a beta run of what's actually going on right now, but there's just no tanks involved?
I'm very glad that you asked that, because I was April 15th, I was in Maine at a Tea Party rally. It was the 19th. That was the actual day of the Patriots Day. They always celebrate the event on that Monday where they have the Boston Marathon. So the Boston Marathon runs, and it ends right in the Back Bay of Boston where the bombs went off, right?
Right.
And I did have a couple of friends that were very close to the bombing. One of our former campers and counselors, her ears were ringing for a couple of days. And one of the Chinese girl, a young Chinese student, I didn't know her personally, but a summer camp that was one of the camps that we've used over the years, she was a frequent attendee at this camp. They knew her very well. So it was a few days after the bombing. It would have been actually April 19th when we were going to have a gathering at the Lexington Green Larry Pratt of Gun Owns America, Garrett Lear, the Patriot Pastor, a number of us were having, and so the town said, they pulled the permit. They said, we think you guys are behind the marathon bombing. You guys, and so this is outrageous. We actually, one of the people involved had a friend that had a relative that was seriously wounded at this bombing. So I remember getting up in the morning. My job was to get Larry Pratt at the nearby airport hotel, in Boston, at Logan Airport, and I got up and I heard this. I heard what was going on, and my initial impression. I got a call from one of the organizers. Says, "Hal, this is going down." I thought all of these Muslim cells were all coming out at once. I didn't know it was just two guys, and one of them was already dead.
Yeah.
So I get on. I bring a couple of my buddies, and we go to the airport, and I see the signs on the highway. Shelter in place. I said, what does that mean? I never heard that term before. It means to hide wherever you are. Hide like a coward.
Like now. Like right now.
Oh, yeah, like right now, yeah. And it was uncanny. The highway, this would be rush hour. I think it was a Friday, Thursday or a Friday, that 19th. It would have been busy with bumper-to-bumper traffic. It was like a Sunday morning at 6 a.m. There was no one on the road. We drove from Boston. We tried to get through Cambridge. We wouldn't let us, but I know some of the shortcuts. We get to the Lexington Green. There are 25 police officers on the green. Like we are somehow going to storm the green. And, they were good about it. They realized, hey, we're just following orders. We don't like what we're doing here. We did have a little rally at the Buckman Tavern. And then I got home, and everybody's sheltering in place. No one's doing anything. I said, this is outrageous. And then I think it was about 5 to 6 o'clock, maybe a little bit later, that Watertown is a small city or town just outside of Boston.
Yes.
The guy was having a cigarette in his backyard. He sees, this guy in my boat. That's the boat was not in the water. It was parked on a trailer in the driveway in the backyard. And they caught it. After they said the shelter in place is over, then they found the guy.
Right.
But yeah, they had these special police, these militaristic police. We don't know where they came from, and they were taking people out of their homes. They were rushing them out of the homes, and then people were cheering them.
Right.
I thought,
with
going
tanks
on
and sound weapons, and they were going door to door, kicking in doors if you would not open up for them, and they used the pretext of needing to hunt down terrorism to do that. It seems a little like what's going on today, but it was cheered by the American people when they left Boston. Maybe they were so relieved that the military police were gone, but it seemed like a patriotic moment. We got those terrorists, but really it was an exercise in locking down a whole city under martial law.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. And what's interesting is that my opinion that it was Obama calling the shots and the governor, Duval Patrick at the time, and I think he probably got the word, okay, end the lockdown, and they ended the lockdown. They ended the lockdown and they were looking for one guy. People rob banks and they're on the lam and they're armed and dangerous. You don't lock down the whole, not just the city, but all of almost eastern Massachusetts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absurd. You get up. I thought, hey, we're looking for this guy. He's early 20s. He's bleeding. He's wounded. Okay, we'll take care of business because a lot of people we're still packing. We'll take care of. If we see the guy,
I know
we
that.
know what to do. You don't need to shut down the whole. It was absurd. And then this notion of Boston Strong. Boston's coming together. Now, the first responders did a very good job. But the notion that it was Boston Strong. And it was disgusting because the mayor, he's deceased now, Mayor Menino, he actually gave the mosque where these two guys were radicalized, they gave him a sweetheart land deal, 10 cents on the dollar, where they built this huge mosque, thanks to Saudi Arabia. And now the imam who was running that place is now working for the city of Boston.
Yeah.
In their immigration office. So that's pretty interesting, and we brought attention to the fact that it was the mayor trying to get credit. Oh, Boston Strong and all this kind of nonsense. You gave these bums the deal. You are responsible. You and the city council are counsel. You're not responsible for the bombing, but you definitely helped to enable these guys. And they refused to talk about Muslim terrorism. Oh, no. It was just two people on their own. You know?
Yeah, but those two people ended up having some kind of connections to the FBI at some point in time, whether they're informants or not. And then it kind of disappeared. You never really got a conclusion to that story.
No, you know, we don't know all of the details. Who was behind? Did they just wake up one day and say, "Hey, let's make a low grade bomb"? In fact, they were getting food stamps and all kinds of federal assistance and state assistance, and they actually bought those what do you call those pressure cookers using their EBD cards.
Yeah,
you know, the taxpayers picked up the tab for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's now stories all the time about how FBI agents, to make terrorism arrests because it would boost how much funding their department would get, would find a crazy homeless guy, befriend them, and then they would go, "Oh, hey, will you just park this car in front of this JCC?" And they would do it. Then they would arrest him and go, "Terrorist." Meanwhile, that guy would have never done it if he wasn't coerced into doing so. Now, I guess that would be the first lockdown, and that's kind of where we're at right now, except we don't need the tanks, we don't need the threats, we don't need the guns. We're all being locked down with words as we speak right now. We've given up. Go ahead.
I tell you what's worse, these ridiculous mask mandates. And I was under the impression that after a couple of months where people aren't dropping dead on the streets because of the Corona 1984 virus, that people will say, you know what, enough's enough of this stuff. But in some places, like in Boston, people love the mask. They want to wear the mask, and they don't need anyone to enforce. They don't need store clerks to enforce it. They don't need the police, the mask wearers themselves. I almost got into 2 fights, and I'm a peaceful, loving guy, but I'm going to stand my ground.
Yeah.
You know. And one guy, you know, I told him, he said, "Oh, you're freaking out. You're not wearing a mask." I said, "Man up. You need to man up." Oh, he didn't like that. And another woman at an ATM machine, and her boyfriend or husband said, "I hope you catch the virus and die."
Yeah, they're vicious. They're vicious people. They're sick people, and they're scared people. And now you can see human nature. I mean, psychology and chemistry were my fortes before I got into technology. And you can see the cowardice of people when the media separates you and then breaks you down with fear over a long period of time.
I tell you, it's very successful. But it's interesting. I was in New Hampshire last weekend looking at property to buy, home to buy, and most people weren't masked. It was very nice. And I came up to northern Maine, and it's not mandatory, and it's just a whole different feeling. You know, you're out in an event and people are shaking hands and not wearing masks. And even when those that are, they're not trying to beat you up because you're not wearing a mask.
Right.
I said, this is, and our summer camp, our family camp, I sold the camp. The camp was a great place, Singing Hills Christian Camp. If you're listening to this show and you want a nice place for your retreat, look them up, Singing Hills Christian Camp in Plainfield, New Hampshire. Most of the groups canceled. 2/3 of their groups canceled way back in March before they even knew how bad this would be or how bad it wouldn't be. And we were determined to hold camp. And they asked us, they said, what would be the breakout, you know, the knockout factor? I said, we're not going to wear masks. If we have to wear masks, we're not going to have the camp. And they said, okay, that's good. And they said, well, what about groups of 50? You know, 2 groups of 50. I says, everyone, you know, so we have a lot of people who come back every year. We have a lot of new people. I said I couldn't have 2 groups that couldn't interact. So, but it's a family camp, so because of that, we were able to have the camp. Where if it was just a youth camp with more than 100 people, we wouldn't be able to do it. So it worked out great. And you know, it was normal. People were having fun. When I went down to that motorcycle rally in the town of Helen, Georgia, most people weren't wearing masks. So this is back in June. People were having fun. Families were picnicking. There was people on there was rafts through the little river that flows through the city or the town.
Yeah.
I said, this is what we're supposed to be enjoying our life. You know, people swimming and having. Summertime is a time when people are out doing things, and I'm just in one respect, I'm disgusted by the lack of freedom that people put up with this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and they make that clear to the audience. We've been talking about that all week. that it is your apathy, it is your lack of civil disobedience that is allowing this level of tyranny. All it would take is tens or hundreds of people to go outside and show other people that it is okay. But then if you were to suggest something like that, they'll go, oh, you suggested that. Now 4 people got sick and it's your fault.
Well, that's right. It's one of these things that, I have a little arguments on some of these social media things,
You still there?
Causing the problem. I don't have the virus. And even if I did, the mathematical probabilities of you getting it from me with your stupid face diaper on your face, if I walk past you, you guys will buy a lottery ticket and you're going to hit the lottery before. You'll be struck by lightning or be killed by a great white shark before you get the virus from me. But you see, they're not thinking clearly. They're scared, you see.
Yeah. Fear clouds judgment.
There's a group called the 3%ers, and the name is based on the 3% of the people who actually participated in the War for Independence. I think it may have been a little higher, but I know there's more than 3% of the people who do not want to wear the mask, and some aren't wearing the masks. And those are the people that are going to show the resistance to the rest of them. And again, if you want to wear a mask, if you have some kind of pre-existing condition, you got a bad immune system, by all means wear a mask. I can respect that. But don't go around driving in your car. Don't go around with a mask and a shield and then run across the street when you see me.
Don't you think so? Let me ask you the question. You wear a mask and they're now trying to force the mask in the home. There's certain states you cannot leave your front door without the mask on. So are they going to start making cars 6 feet apart to comply with the social distancing standards? Are we going to lose all contact as human beings where they want to limit our senses, that we can't assemble anymore? They're going to eventually cut off our cell phones and cut off our ways of communication. I mean, that seems like what we're heading for. It seems like they can't pull this back. Do you think after November they can just go, oh, okay, the pandemic's over, we can just get back to the level of tyranny we were at before? Or do you think they have to go all the way this time?
Well, something, as I said earlier, I look at, I'm not a Pollyanna, but I do have an optimistic outlook of the future. I think this might be, there's some positive things. We have to look at the positive things, and I think Alex Newman did an article about it at some point on his website. All the government schools are closed. Isn't that wonderful?
It is. In a way, it is. All the government
schools are closed. So it's now our opportunity to encourage people to keep them closed. Now, what's the solution? We know is home education.
Yeah.
And we're up here and we're visiting churches and we're challenging the pastors and say, look, you're righteous. You are holding services. You've been holding them right along. And your congregants aren't hiding themselves behind a mask. You have a building that's only used maybe on a Sunday at morning, maybe a Wednesday night. This is where the school should be. The Freedom Project Education satellite school.
Yes.
And you see all around. And what about the home churches? We just started a home church in Lexington, Massachusetts. And we say, look, we don't want you to leave the church you're in. They say, well, our church isn't meeting, but we're meeting in a home. And that's how the church was started. There was no cathedrals, churches back in the book of Acts. These were these were in the homes. The cathedrals and giant buildings came later. And that's where there's more. The people in that church. It's these mega churches with 10,000 people at a service, and the pastor's a rumor. You don't even know who the pastor is.
Yeah.
Or he's some fraud like Joel Osteen. Some nitwit with soft, mushy theology.
Yeah.
Walking around with a Black Lives Matter banner.
Yeah. No, that's true, and a lot of people are getting misled at their churches and not saying anything about it right now. So let me.
And the other thing too is that, we thought open borders were a good thing. Maybe here are the liberal governors want to close the borders, state borders.
The state borders, yeah, you can't. You can come into the country all you want unidentified, but you can't go state to state. I can't visit you right now, and we live less than 45 minutes away. And if I do, I have to quarantine for 2 weeks. And if I don't tell the government, and someone snitches on me, which they will, $2,000 fine. So this was the point we made last night. The point we made last night was There is no face mask debate. It doesn't matter if they work or if they do not work. They are forcing you to do it at the tip of a gun. That is what a tax is. That is what an edict is. That is what tyranny is. It doesn't matter if Yale comes out and says this doesn't work or that doesn't work. It does not matter if N95 masks on their website says they're not made for viral infections. What matters is it is now law to put these things on your face, and if you do not put them on your face, you will get fined or arrested or worse.
Actually, in some places, it's not even a law. It's a governor's executive order.
Right.
And so far, though, I've skirted this. I've gone into places, and hey, I get a medical condition. Yes, I'm allergic to communism. I can't wear a mask, and they haven't bothered me. I was kicked out of only 2 places. Almost got into 2 fights, but other than that, I've been able to maintain some. Although, let's face it, I used to enjoy going food shop, go in there, look around different products, compare prices, and chat with the people in the aisles. You don't do that anymore. You go in there and get out. You know?
They yelled at my wife the other day because she wouldn't follow the lines. We do have the yellow lines in our grocery stores where you have to walk up and down the way they tell you to walk up and down like a good little slave. And not one of the workers, but one of our neighbors yelled at her for walking the wrong way, which shows you how quickly your neighbors and your community will turn on you and how malleable they are to authority, to perceived authority. Even though walking in any kind of line does not make you any less chance of getting sick, they would gladly walk in any line that was put on the floor if they felt 1% safer, which, obviously the common phrase is, you give up a little bit of liberty for security. You should lose both, and you will lose both. And I think that's what we're seeing right now.
That's true. That's absolutely true. So, but you just have to, at some point, you just got to say, I've drawn the line in the sand. And I like to quote one of my favorite patriotic Americans, Popeye. He says, "That's all I can stand. I can stand no more."
Yeah.
He eats that spinach and he goes there and kicks gluteus maximus.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy. I'm happy to talk to normal people. I'm glad people are finally sharing this out. Thank goodness this worked out tonight. We're all kind of banned at this point in time, but I'm trying to bring everyone together under the banner of we need to work together. The other side, you saw them, like Kamala Harris called Joe Biden a racist. And also she not only said he's a racist, or implied it, she said that she believes the woman that accused him of sexual assault, and now they're the best of friends because they all unify when it's time to unify. Our side, it's a bunch of pockets of liberty, and I can't talk to him. The SPLC said this. I can't talk to him. The ADL said this. And I believe in pure freedom. Absolutely. And if anyone wants to debate, they can email me, pushlive@protonmail.com. But freedom of speech is absolute. You do not lose that right. It holds up all other rights and the Second Amendment as well, but the First Amendment especially. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think you're right. It's almost like a domino effect. You lose one amendment, the other one's will follow suit. But I see the Second Amendment coming out ahead of this one because, even the leftists, some of them are armed. Hey, you have a right to bear arms regardless of your ideological bent, as long as you're wrong shooting, killing people. But there was that black militia, which I can't even mention because it's a vulgar word, it's a vulgar expression. But they showed up in whatever town it was. I think it was about a month ago, a couple of weeks ago, and they don't know how to. Some of them weren't trained well enough, and one of the members accidentally shot a couple of their own people.
Really?
So
I didn't see that.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting how they. And there was some 3%ers that showed up, but thankfully there was no gun exchanges. And but again, at our camp we had a great camp. Like I said, this year we had a great family camp. For the first time in our 12-year camp history, we actually were able to do some firearms shooting, some marksmanship, because most of the camps, when they have insurance policies, they so you can't, no weapons, which is fine. I understand that, but this place, this is New Hampshire. So we taught over 40 people who had never fired a weapon in their lives we had some our camp doctors, an NRA instructor, my son was an instructor, and a few other trained instructors, and a lot of people. They said, "This is." We had some people coming from Queens, New York, and from the Bronx, and from Boston, who really never. It's not part of their culture, but it is now. I said, "You have and you better learn how to defend yourself, because calling 911 isn't defending yourself."
No, it's not.
911 to pick up the pieces,
Right.
Not to prevent a problem, but after the fact.
Yeah.
So it was a great experience. We even had a couple of cannons there. We didn't fire cannonballs. We just fired the black powder.
Right.
But it was great, and I think that is, and the gun companies they can't keep up with the demand. There's such an overwhelming demand for weaponry.
Last month was the highest number ever reported for gun sales. I guess I don't want to take up your time. I hope you come back. Last question.
I'd love to.
Last question, and I hope people share it out. You heard it last night from David Weiss. You heard it from a lot of different people. Most censored, hard to find page. I hope you share it on your page. We don't file copyright strikes unless you try to take one of us out of context. But let's say we have the Fourth Amendment, which was basically suspended in 2001 after 9/11, which we haven't seemed to gain back. In fact, we've now got into this mode of surveillance capitalism, and now they can just kick down your door and kill your dog. I heard estimates as high as 500 dogs a day. 500 dogs a day are murdered in no-knock warrants, meaning that they lay down 500 dogs a day in no-knock warrants. And we celebrate that as people. I mean, do we need to really get together and start teaching civics to our children again so they understand what their constitutional rights are, and not just relocate to the safest place, because those places will get overrun at some point?
Well, of course. And again, when they, it was very interesting that Ronald Reagan signed a bill into law that says that if your school or your college gets federal money, they have to set aside a time around September 17th to teach the Constitution. And people, that sounds great. That's unconstitutional, right? To give money to schools. So yes, but it's how they're instructed, because Obama wasn't he a constitutional professor? Did he teach the Constitution? So what are they teaching? They're getting Howard Zinn's version of the Constitution, that it's an ugly, evil document written by horrible white people, Eurocentric slave owners, 200 in an agrarian society. Or they get it from us. We say the Constitution is a document that was one of the greatest liberty documents that was ever written, and that it is more important today than it was back when it was first ratified, because it deals with human nature.
Yeah.
And human nature doesn't change, regardless if you have a musket or an AR, or you have a parchment, or you have high-tech, social media. That doesn't change. Human nature does not change. And in order to have freedom, you have to keep the government strictly limited at all levels. And that's not going to change. And, these people will say, we hate the Constitution. What do you replace it with? The Communist Manifesto?
Yeah.
That was written by a racist and an anti-Semite.
Yeah.
And look at the people who adopt that. Look at the genocide that's happened because of the people who adopt. Look at our country.
Yeah.
We've had our problems. I'm not saying that and we're not ashamed to explain them, to teach them. But look at all the good things that come out of this country. Why do people come here? Why do Mexicans want to risk their lives sneaking into this country to be exploited by white racists? By systemic racism?
Yeah.
Why do Haitians leave their country on leaky boats, half of them drowning, to be here exploited by white racists? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I don't see anybody trying to sneak into Cuba, or anybody sneaking. I mean, if I was a Cuban soldier and somebody was sneaking in, I'd say, you're either a spy or you're insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why in the heck would you want to come here,
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. But the people who didn't want borders at all, period, point blank, and that's rhinos as well as Democrats, all of a sudden want borders and states, and they want to limit our ability to communicate, our ability to shoot, and our ability to travel, which is the three ways, if you go on army.com, that they fight kinetic warfare. I mean, you can go and look that up. That is how you control a people. So I hope people wake up soon to this, and I hope
it's also how they're going to try to reach their Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 goals. All these sports teams, which I've got nothing but contempt for, with a few exceptions of some of the players, they're not flying all over the country. They're not doing their thing in front of packed audiences. They're at empty buildings, right? There's a lot of carbon that's not being burnt, when you're not flying in airplanes that much, when you're not living your life. So that's one of the things, is they're trying to reach their goal, but they're not going to succeed, in my opinion. I think they're going to fail miserably. And I think we need voices like yours, and get the word out. We need to stop being afraid to speak the truth.
Speak truth.
I mean, speak the truth out there, and I think it's going to resonate well. And again, I think there's a lot more people who love freedom and don't like what's happening. And I think it takes leadership, though. It takes people like you, people like Alex, Duke Pesta, and all these other great people out there to stand up and say, we're Americans. This is the greatest country in the world. And yeah, there was a virus, and there are things you can do to try to prevent it, but you're not going to put masks on and become a medical dictatorship to stop a virus. That's not how it works.
A medical technocracy. And if you share the page out and we get to a bigger platform, I will explain nanotech and larger. That was my field, and not you. I'm speaking to the audience in general, but I worked in that field for 10 years. This going public and making media friends got me fired. I became a liability for the top merger in the country, and so I hope people find the page and donate and help the show grow, or just spread out the links if they can't afford to. But the last point I do want to bring up, because I've tried to get this shot in twice now. The WNBA, originally it came out and said they didn't want any of the Marxism to come out because they want to still sell tickets. And then today the WNBA comes out and says, you either choose us or you choose the flag. And I thought to myself, I didn't even know the WNBA still existed. So, this was...
I mean, first off, and again, I can respect people that can play a sport. I can respect these ladies that they can play better than I can, even my younger day. Okay, but they're subsidized by the NBA. They can't even stand on their own. So it's bye-bye, ladies. No, I'm not going to choose you or the flag. Sorry, not really that interested.
I mean, if I'm not going to choose NASCAR over you or the NBA, and LeBron James wants to be an outright Marxist, what do you think I'm going to do with the WNBA? What makes you think I'm going to support that? I mean, you're out of your mind. I believe the enemies of America, they did a great job in distracting the American male through these sports. Yes. How many people, hey, we're having an event, or we want to stop this project. We need funds to help promote the Constitution. Oh, gee, I'm not interested. But I'm going to the Patriots game. I'm a season ticket holder. I'm spending thousands of dollars rooting for people who hate my guts, that want to destroy my country. I'm sorry. They're going to fold, and I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, some of these grown men in their 30s and their 40s even, they could name you every player that played for the Yankees or the Red Sox, and they play fantasy football 24/7 and ignore their wives and stuff. They couldn't tell you one constitutional right that they have, or they couldn't tell you. Go ahead. Yeah, they couldn't name one signer of the Declaration. No. But I heard an interesting thing, that the coronavirus did something that the American women could not have done. Close the sporting events, close the bar rooms, and keep the men at home. Yeah, that would be funny if they weren't going broke. 15 million unemployed as of today. I know it. That's it. But I'm saying that's a great point. But that's what they want. They want us poor, dependent on the government. And the only way out of this beast system is to keep forming networks and communities, which is why I've been willing and open to talk to anybody who's willing to talk to me. And I hope people don't not talk to me based on who I've spoken to or made friends with. But I hope you come back, and I hope we talk more, and I hope more people share this out. I'd love to. And we have our own radio show, and I'd like to invite you on. But tomorrow I have the honor of interviewing Bevelyn Beatty. Oh,
one of the young ladies that painted over that Black Lives Matter
Yes.
ridiculous graffiti. And I'm looking forward. She lives in New York. I wanted to invite her up to Boston, up to Lexington, but she's heading to Europe in September. But she's someone that we're going to keep in our network. I just love her. What a motivational thing she did. What a great morale booster. She's right down in Midtown Manhattan. We are not supposed to say anything about Black Lives Matter, and she's saying Black Lives Matter are killing us.
Right.
And she's painting over the. She and a friend of hers. I thought, and then she got arrested. She got out within a matter of minutes. The cops think that she's great. She went up down. She went up to the. I think she went up to Harlem to do the same thing, paint out the. And then she went down to Brooklyn and to do the same thing down there.
Yeah, and she went to
God love
Chad's. She went to Chad's as well, and I've been dying to get her on. So if you can ever send her my way, please do. But I would absolutely do your show.
I will send you. I will give you her email address.
Yeah.
I'll send it to you so you can reach out to her. Yeah.
And I hope the audience keeps sharing it out. We're like one of the most banned on YouTube, but we do have iTunes, we do have Podbean, we do have TuneIn, and you can find us at libertysentinel.org. Alex will be back on Tuesday. We're talking to Hal Shurtleff of Camp Constitution right now. We talked about your constitutional rights. We talked about how fake the media is. We talked about the Boston bombings. We talked about things that you can do about it. We're solutions all week, and I hope you come back soon, Hal, when we get this all together, and I hope it's video.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. God bless.
God bless you. Bye now.
Bye now. So that's how things go on this, and everyone can see it. So I'm glad after David Weiss, we have Hal Shurtleff on. Tomorrow night is Dr. Duke Pesta. So all the people that wanted to talk about Christianity and spirituality, Dr. Duke Pesta will be joining us. That's going to be early at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I appreciate everyone who subscribed last night and over the day. It was very overwhelming that people actually found the page. If you subscribe to our podcast, we are going to upload one of the 60 interviews you missed because it got banned every single day. If you have any tips, email pushlive@protonmail.com. You can find all the links in the description. If you really want to support us, we have a Patreon up and a lot of other ways, but the only support we really need right now is prayers and shares, and thank you for helping us get the stream out. I love you to death, and God bless. We will turn this thing around, and the fight is here on Google. We do have other platforms, but we appreciate when you share it out here, because if we get 100 to 1,000 people jammed in here, then that's a victory for a page that's been banned for quite a while. So God bless. We'll see you tomorrow. Sorry for the rocky start, and I don't know. Stay safe, and don't be a slave.